Hello, I'm going to share with you the results of some research we did on the major aspects. These are the aspects used commonly in Western astrology, and there are five of these aspects: the conjunction, opposition, square, trine, and sextile. So we have collected some data on extraversion and introversion. So this is a psychological test that evaluates how extroverted or introverted you are, and we look to see if these five major aspects would correlate with extroversion and introversion. Now, this study is actually a continuation of an earlier study that was done, but you do not need to go back to that earlier study to watch this video. So that earlier study, it has the same title, The Strongest Scientific Evidence for Astrology. So, what we found in the previous study was that minor aspects are important, in particular 11th harmonic, or as I like to call them, vibrations. The 11 vibration aspects between Sun and Jupiter, and also between Mars and Jupiter, correlate with being extroverted. So people that have Sun and Jupiter in these 11 vibration aspects are more extroverted. And as I explained in the other video, this really makes sense for people who use these so-called minor aspects. And we also found that Sun and Saturn in 7 vibration inclined to introversion. And a third thing we found is that when Jupiter is way above the horizon, up near the top, in the 8th, ninth, 10th, or 11th houses, you also tend to be extroverted, which makes sense. Now, the question has come up from a few people, well, why are you looking at minor aspects? How about the major aspects? We call them major for a reason. Well, let's check it out and see if they're important. So, as I have here on the slide, what about the big five? Conjunctions, oppositions, squares, trines, and sextiles. So what I did is I added each of these aspects to the formula. We call it the astro signature. These list of things that we think will correlate with how extroverted or introverted a person is. And we added the major aspects. And we did the common sense thing, which is add an aspect to Jupiter and expect the person to be more extroverted. So the question is this: if a person is born with Sun conjunct Jupiter, or Sun square, or trine, or opposition Jupiter, does that person tend to be more extroverted? Well, let's find out. I was very curious. Some people asked about it, and I thought, I wonder. Let's look at it. Okay, and what we found, I'll tell you what we found, and then I'll show you the details of this. We found that Sun trine Jupiter correlates with extroversion. So the people that were born with Sun trine Jupiter at the time, in their birth charts, they are in fact more extroverted. But the Sun in the other four aspects, conjunction, opposition, square, and sextile, they did not correlate. That's what we found. And I'll talk about whether that might make any sense or not. So here's what we do in this research. We're using the Sirius astrology software. This is a version 3.0. This feature is also in the Kepler software. And you make a list of what you expect to see in the charts. And in the original formula, we have 3 sections. So here in this red bracket, number 1, these are the 11 vibration aspects. It's actually a little, I guess you'd say, complicated or more involved than just saying 11. It's actually 11 and multiples of 11. 11, 22, 40, 40, 44, 88, 176, and also 11 times 11, which is 121. Same thing for Mars, Jupiter. And there's the Sun, Saturn, multiples of 7, which are given minus points, means introverted. And there's Jupiter up near the top of the chart, leading to extraversion. So if you're not familiar with this harmonic astrology or vibrational astrology, this looks really, really strange. Like, what about, the basic fundamentals, are the things that we all know and love and use, our conjunctions, oppositions, squares, and so on. Okay, so here's what I did. As as I mentioned on at the bottom of this slide, I added a Ptolemaic aspect to this list. So I just added it to see what would happen. So the formula with all these 11 vibration and 7 vibration and Jupiter above the horizon has produces a correlation of 0.13. It's not an extremely high correlation, but it gives what's called a t-value of 4.10. This t-value tells you the probability means it's less than 1 in 10,000. So the correlation is strong. So what I did is I added Sun trine Jupiter. Let me go back to this list. I just go into the software, I say customize, and at the bottom I add Sun trine Jupiter. Excuse me. And I did it twice. I did it with a 5-degree 20-minute orb. That might look like a strange value, but that's based on the vibrational astrology theory. And then I tried it with a small orb of 3 degrees, and it worked. It raised the correlation from 0.13 to 0.14, and it raised the t-value from 4.1 to around 4.2. Now that may not sound like a big improvement, but raising a t-value of 4.1 even higher is difficult to do. You have to have something that really works to improve that t-value, because it's already 1 in 10,000 1 in what is it? Less than 1 in 10,000 probability. So you have to have something that strongly correlates to raise it even higher. So this suggests that Sun trine Jupiter does lead to extraversion. But very curiously, here are the 4 other aspects. They do not. Typically what happens if something's not correlating is the t-value goes down. And they all go down almost the same exact amount into the 3.91 to 3.99 range. So it doesn't help. It doesn't improve our ability to predict extraversion. So the trine stands out very differently from the other aspects. Now, does that mean that trine aspect between Sun and Jupiter is definitely related to extraversion? We don't know that yet. What we have to do is repeat the study. Get these introversion extraversion scores for some more people and see if we get the same results. So, each research study tells you a little bit. It takes a step forward. And what this study tells us is that it looks like trines between Sun and Jupiter could incline to extraversion, but not the other aspects. It's a strong possibility. And that's what this kind of research is all about, is probabilities. And if you repeat the studies several times and you get the results, then you're very, very sure. Okay, now does it make any sense? Why would the trine lead to extraversion and not the other aspects? Well, you can make a little bit of sense out of it. The conjunction, from my personal point of view as a vibrational astrologer, it's very difficult to know what conjunctions will do in a chart. It depends on the context. So that conjunctions didn't correlate with extraversion doesn't surprise me. The sextile. In vibrational astrology, we look at sextiles as making harmonious connections, because it's 3 times 2. 2 means relating. 3 is easy, flowing naturally. So Sun sextile Jupiter inclines a person to be social. Social is extroverted, tolerant, and engages with other people. I thought it might incline to extraversion a little bit. Not as conspicuously as, for example, the 11 vibration, which makes people extremely restless, and they always on the go, but a little bit. It didn't get confirmed in this study. Also, the opposition, I thought, could be mildly extroverted. That was not confirmed. The square also did not lead to extroversion, but the trine did. Maybe the trine makes the person just feel very relaxed, very able, to, very easily goes along with whatever's happening. If somebody says, "Oh, let's go to the movies tonight," sure, yeah, let's go to the movies. you know, it just makes the person open, flexible, not so serious and focused on something that they feel so responsible about, and they much more rather engage with the larger world and accept what's happening. I don't know, but we try to make sense of the results. So, the bottom line is really that the major aspects did not produce an, a clear, strong correlation with extraversion. The trine appears that it might lead to it a little bit, but not as intensely strong as the 11 vibration, which really strongly inclined to extraversion. Okay, so those are the results of the study. Now, here's an interesting thing if you're really into doing research and doing it properly that you should know about is note that I added the aspect to the existing formula. Instead of adding, for example, Sun trine Jupiter to this list of other things, could I just make an astro signature of just Sun trine Jupiter without all those other things? I definitely could, and in fact, it's a very good idea to do it. Now, let me read from this slide to tell you why it's a very good idea to test it separately, and I did, and I'll show you the results of that in a minute. But let me read it from here so we can make sure we get all of these important points about this. Number one, an alternative to adding the Ptolemaic aspect to the astro signature is to test only the Ptolemaic aspect. Just do Sun trine Jupiter by itself. Then do Sun sextile Jupiter just by itself. Now, if you do this, it's going to tell you obviously whether that aspect inclines to extroversion outside of the context of the rest of this. And there's something important to know about, which is Simpson's paradox. Simpson's paradox, as related to this situation, is that you could get for example, a strong positive correlation when you do Sun trine Jupiter by itself, but then when you add it to something else, you do not get the correlation. It's like counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense. Like if Sun trine Jupiter inclines to extraversion, then if I add the Sun trine Jupiter to other things that also incline to extraversion, then they should just, you would think they would just all add up together, right? So, for example, if having good reflexes makes you a good athlete, and if being physically strong makes you a good athlete, and if determination makes you a good athlete, then you would think if you take all three of those, then you have a great predictor for being athletic. They're just going to add to each other. And typically they do, but not always. Now, why this happens, you can Google Simpson's paradox and read about it. I'm not going to get into that. But for now, I just want you to know that it can happen. So even though Sun sextile Jupiter, Sun square Jupiter, and so on, did not correlate with extraversion when added to this formula, they could work when they're done alone. Okay? So the basic strategy is this. If you have a formula that you're confident about, like if you feel like, wow, this 11 vibration, I'm betting, so to speak, because research is like gambling. I'm going to gamble on this. This is what I think is working. The results, my intuition, my instincts tell me that this 11 vibration result is very strong. I think it works, then you're inclined to just add these other aspects to it. But if you're really doubting your whole formula and you want to just try from scratch, then run it by itself. Okay, I hope you followed that. So this will help you understand it. So what I did is I ran Sun opposition Jupiter with a 5-degree orb just by itself. Does Sun opposition Jupiter incline to extraversion? The answer is no, it doesn't. If you get a zero correlation, it means there's no relationship at all. Here the correlation is minus 0.01. So if you're within about 1 or 2% of zero, it's saying there's nothing going on. In fact, it technically speaking came out slightly leading to introversion, but really it's so close to no relationship. It's saying there's no connection at all. That Sun opposition Jupiter, at least with a 5-degree orb, has nothing to do with extroversion from this study. Now we could try it again with a 3-degree orb, 1-degree orb, 10-degree orb. This is why research takes so much time. You can check all these things out. But I just tried a 5-degree orb. Then I tried sextile with a 2-degree orb. I just made up these orbs. I don't know, just to try them out. Same thing, almost the same exact result. No relationship. Then I tried the Jupiter, Sun trine Jupiter, with that full orb, 5 degrees, 20 minutes. And sure enough, we got a little bit of a positive correlation and the T value up around 0.73. That's not really that significant, but it shows that maybe Sun trine Jupiter inclines to extraversion a little bit. It's nowhere near close to what we call statistical significance. We have a large sample size of 940 people. All of this means it's not very impressive. Maybe Sun trine Jupiter a tiny bit leads to extraversion. And really, if you're doing it like a real critical scientific view, you would be inclined to say these major aspects do not have any relationship to whether a person is introverted or extroverted. As opposed to that Sun Jupiter 11 vibration, which has a very strong correlation. So I wanted to just show you what the results are of looking at these major aspects for several reasons. One is it's nice to know. We kind of skipped over it. Do the major aspects look important? The answer is no, maybe the trine a little bit. And also to learn a little bit about how you answer these questions and the importance of adding what you're interested in to an existing formula, and also you can run it separately. And also try different orbs or different settings. I didn't try all those variations, but that could be done as well. So 4 summary points here. Number 1, Sun trine Jupiter might very mildly incline to extraversion. It might very mildly at best. Number 2, each aspect has its own qualities. So some people kind of throw together trines and sextiles or squares and oppositions. Personally, I think they work pretty differently. There's some similarities, but this is an interesting part of the research, is that only the trine looks hopeful, possible. But it's something to think about. How similar are these aspects, or how different they are? This research doesn't answer that question, but it kind of makes us think about it a little bit. And as I said, the Ptolemaic aspects by themselves have too weak of an effect in regards to introversion and extroversion to have a noticeable effect. The 11 vibration aspects appear to have effects that are really noticeable. I mean, you're getting probability of 1 in 10,000, less than 1 in 10,000. They're having noticeable effects. It looks like they really work. And also, we haven't shared this research outside of the Vibrational Astrology Conference, where we presented results of our research on bipolar disorder. But we found that the 11 vibration is very important in bipolar disorder. So it's confirming the power of 11 vibration again. And the fourth thing, we need to repeat the study. We need to replicate the study. The results are very interesting, and replication would be, wonderful to do. It would be very important. Um, Probably not going to happen very soon because somebody has to give introversion, extroversion survey, questionnaire to people, collect that data, and then enter the birth data, and then we could do the study. But in astrology, we don't have institutes for doing research, and people just work independently on their own as they can. So it's probably not going to happen soon. We all wish it could, but probably not. And that is my last slide. Okay, I just wanted to share those results on the major aspects. We're starting to get a storm here. Okay, all right, my friends. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.